Sunlight slipped through acacia leaves, painting the dusty, clearing gold. In the hush, a small dog sat trembling beside 3 tiny cubs, each a breath away from the world. People had written them off an unlikely family, abandoned and fragile. Rumors whispered that in these plains, mercy was a rare coin. But in the silence, a heart waited to change everything. A small whimper broke the stillness, soft as a prayer. The cubs huddled close, trusting the warmth they had. Dust rose like memory when paws stirred the earth. No one expected mercy on this stretch of sunburnt ground. The dog stood guard with a courage that didn't need a crown. He licked a cub's brow as if promising the moon. Around them, the world moved on, unaware of the pledge made. Eyes met. 2 kinds of fear, 2 kinds of longing. The wind carried a smell no title could tame. Hope arrived in footsteps that didn't belong to the pack. The lioness watched from the shade, muscles coiled like questions. Her gaze held a lifetime of hunts and a single soft ache. She stepped closer, not as hunter, but as country unseen. Something inside her shifted like twilight into dawn. For a moment, ancient rules forgot their names. She lowered her head, the air trembling between breaths. The dog didn't flinch. His heartbeat spoke louder than teeth. Tenderness, unpredictable and brave, began its work. Nature paused, no roar, only the hush of a new promise. A paw brushed a cub, and time rewrote the margin lines. They shared warmth that could have belonged to kin. The plains held their breath, learning to hope again. It wasn't about who they were, but what they chose to be. By dusk, the sun bowed to the unlikeliest family standing tall. A shadow stretched long as the day cooled into memory. The cubs stirred, dreaming of a world with softer edges. The dog circled them like one who keeps vows. Birdsong stitched the distance, fragile and brave. The lioness lingered, curiosity caught between hunger and something else. Her eyes softened, the way rain softens iron. She lowered herself, an emblem of patience more than power. The cubs blinked, little moons of trust opening. The dog watched every motion as if reading a sacred text. Around them, small predators kept respectful distance. Even the hyraxes paused, sensing a story larger than themselves. The lioness padded closer, careful as a confession. She sniffed the air, tasting the salt of survival and the sweetness of surprise. A breeze carried the scent of distant water and kinder things. The cubs sniffed back, discovering a new alphabet of scents. Eyes met again. No challenge, only recognition. The dog tilted his head, willing the world to rewrite its rules. The sun slid lower, gilding a pact none had predicted. Shadows lengthened, and a fragile peace settled like ash. The plain had never felt so full of possible miracles. The lioness settled beside them, not entirely surrendering her dignity, but in that small concession lived the birth of trust. The dog exhaled, a little less tremor in his breath. Night would come, and with it, the test. They braced together. A family by choice. Distant rumble announced the movement of other. Livestock scavengers circled like questions with sharp beaks. A young cub stirred and let out an uncertain call. The lioness rose with quiet authority, every sinew tuned. The dog stood between her and the cubs, a tiny sentinel. For a breath, they looked like a single decision carved in sand. The newcomers halted, sizing up the unusual scene. Whispers spread among them, curiosity wrapped in caution. A jackal lingered at the edge, teeth flashing in the last light. The lioness watched him with the patience of long season. She gave a soft warning, the kind that saves rather than slays. Even the jackal backed away, something in his bones learning restraint. The dog barked once, not loud, but full of unshakable claim. It was a sound that stitched the odd family tighter. The plains recognized authority in a new language. One by one, the visitors retreated to their own shadows. The clearing exhaled, relief like rain after drought. The cubs pressed closer, tasting safety for the first time. The dog lowered his head, letting the lioness's scent settle in his memory. Their roles carved deeper. Protector, guardian, quiet mother of another kind. In that hush, a truce planted its fragile root. The unexpected visitor left behind a lesson of boundaries and mercy. The night reclaimed the sky. Stars like small witnesses, they slept, brief and trusting. Beneath an unlikely roof, morning found the lioness watchful. A tide of instincts humming, her cubs circled her like questions seeking answers. She nuzzled them, the ancient ritual of warmth and safety. Yet her gaze kept sliding to the dog. Puzzled and tender, she did not know the name for this new softness in her chest. A mother's love, she discovered, can arrive in surprising clothes. The dog moved with humble devotion, offering fragments of food. She accepted what he gave as if learning a new currency. Their routines braided, hunting, guarding simple, small mercies. Other lionesses watched, tongues flicking in confusion. Whispers rose, "What is this? Who allowed it? Where is the law?" But the cubs thrived on the odd rhythm of two kinds of care. The lioness found herself forgiving a dog's imperfection. He was noisy and small, but his heart was enormous. She sheltered him from the sharp edges of pride that could cut. In her confusion, a new wisdom grew. Love is wider than lineage. Her cubs gambled, learning both ferocity and gentle play. She caught herself laughing, a sound rare and luminous. The plains softened at the sight of it. Old rules bowed. Neighbors adapted. The impossible became simply another day. A mother's confusion turned into acceptance, then into pride. In the hush of evening, she bowed her head to the dog-like kin. Every choice needs permission from history. Sometimes grace simply arrives and asks to be kept. Days passed, and small rituals became the spine of their lives. The cubs learned to chase dust and to rest on the dog's flank. He tolerated their roughness with a patience that stunned. When predators came too close, the lioness roared and the dog barked, their voices mixed like two instruments learning harmony. Rain came and they huddled under the same sheltering thorn. The dog shivered, and the lioness nuzzled him without hesitation. Their bond wasn't loud, it was the quiet way shelter is given. Other animals watched, then slowly mirrored the respect. The cubs grew bolder, carried by the safety of two protectors. The dog taught them the small joys of rooting in the dirt. The lioness taught them the dignity of cautious strength. They balanced each other. Softness where one needed steel. Neighbors began leaving scraps, offerings to the miracle at the clearing. Children of a nearby village named them in passing, voices full of awe. Photographs traveled on whispered roads like proofs of wonder. Hunters paused, unwilling to intrude on that sacred arrangement. The dog slept with his head on a cub's shoulder, as if it was the most natural thing. The lioness watched over them like a promise kept. In the quiet hours, they communicated without words. A look. Exchange could still a storm and start a river. Their bond became a living fable taught to the young. It was as if the plains decided to forgive itself. Through them, they had become family not by blood, but by choosing to stay. One night thunder rolled, splitting the sky in two. Lightning painted outlines of every living thing in harsh white. The cubs trembled as rain hit the earth in impatient fists. The dog whimpered, his small body rigid with worry. The lioness rose, muscles coiled to answer any threat. A hunter's trap shone like a cruel star beyond the brush. Screams sliced the air, another life snared in metals indifferent. Teeth. The lioness moved like a shadow, moving to rescue a prayer. She approached the trap with the careful foot of one who knows loss. Her powerful jaws clicked open the mechanism with practiced force. The trapped animal stumbled free, shocked and grateful and alive. In that moment, the whole clearing hummed with relief. The dog nuzzled each cub, counting them like a litany of lucky things. They all smelled of rain and adrenaline and an odd kind of victory. The lioness came back to them, breathless and quiet, eyes bright. Her coat glistened with storm water and a new tenderness. They curled together, small bodies a fortress against the dark. Outside the world raged, but inside a different world held sway. That night taught them the true measure of courage, action, not sound. It taught the dog he could be brave enough to stand with giants. It taught the lioness that power is kinder when it chooses mercy. They slept deep, wrapped in the newfound certainty of belonging. When morning came, the mud held footprints of a night they had passed. They rose, unchanged in form but forever altered in heart. One afternoon, a rival pride appeared at the ridge. Their leader's eyes were hard. Carrying old grievances, he sniffed the air and saw the strange family. Below, duty tugged at him like a rope pulled by custom. The lioness stepped forward to meet the ridge's question. She could have led her pride to reclaim old orders. But as she looked at the dog and her cubs, something else answered. She chose a path that would astonish those who read only the old laws. Instead of battle, she issued a quiet invitation, sit and watch. Her rival paced, surprised by the absence of fury. He saw the dog sleeping with the cubs licking the dog's face. A memory of his own cubs flitted across his closed pupils. For a moment, he remembered softness and the foolishness of endless feuds. He snorted, then sat down, the fight evaporating like morning mist. The pride relaxed, confused but following the signal home. The plains breathed again. Relieved at the choice for peace, the dog wagged his tail, ignorant of the diplomacy he'd just inspired. The lioness returned to her family and lay down like a seal of calm. Her choice rippled. Other leaders began to question old certainties. Blood had been expected. Instead, mercy set a new precedent. She had chosen love over law and brought a small revolution. With it, her cubs learned that bravery can look like restraint. The dog learned he could occupy spaces he was never meant. Two together, they had changed not only their lives, but the rules of the plain. Word of the family reached the villagers who walked the old path. At first, they came with cameras and hungry eyes. Then, with offering hands, a little girl left a bowl of milk, her small fingers trembling with kindness. Old men whispered prayers, moved by a spectacle that softened them. Photographs went farther than anyone expected, carried on wind and wonder. A journalist arrived, scribbling notes that would travel cities. The story spread not of spectacle, but of choices that taught. Donations came for the clearing, shelter, extra food, blankets. The animal world found itself claimed by the humans' curiosity and care. Some came to gawk, others to learn, and a few to protect. The lioness tolerated the presence of strangers like an unworried queen. The dog welcomed the children with a shy, wagging heart. The cubs, now bolder, let small hands stroke their ears. A new rhythm took root, shared vigilance between two species. With attention came responsibility, and the humans kept their promise. They cleaned the clearing, set up a small shaded den for the dog. Vets came and checked the health of the cubs with gentle hands. The plains found allies in the villagers who had once been distant. This turning point proved that compassion, when contagious, heals wide. The family no longer survived in silence, they thrived in kindness. Their story became a lesson taught in schoolyards and market squares. Every child who knew it learned that miracles often arrive, disguised as ordinary days, and the lioness and dog kept living, their bond steady as the sun's arc. The world around them had quietly shifted toward better things. News spreads. Through the plains, stories grew wings and crossed borders of grass and sky. Conversations in farm markets included the tale of the odd family. Researchers took notes, not to dissect, but to understand a miracle. Artists painted them, capturing the softness of improbable kinship. Songs were hummed in the cool of evening about the dog and the lioness. Tourists came, but so did young rangers with pockets full of plans they taught safe, ways to observe without changing the heart of the place. School children signed drawings and left them at the clearing's edge. The clearing became a quiet classroom for empathy. The dog grew used to new faces but kept his favorite cub close. The lioness watched the visitors. With an amused, regal air, she seemed to say, "We will accept help, but not the destruction of our ways." Respect and wonder balanced on a fragile tightrope and held. The authorities discussed protection measures. Finally, moved by sight and story, a small sanctuary was proposed, not to cage but to conserve life. The people who visited left gentler than when they arrived, and those who stayed learned that closeness does not equal ownership. The cubs grew into their stripes while the world around them grew kinder. At night, travelers told tales of the clearing as if it were a fairy tale made real. Songs carried the moral. Hearts can cross borders no map ever drew. The plains, once stern and silent, now echoed with laughter and guardianship. In every corner where the story reached, hands found ways to help. The miracle had become a movement of small mercies replicated. The lioness and dog lived on as teachers of a language older than fear. Seasons turned, and the cubs' legs grew steady and strong. They learned to hunt with the pride, yet still nap on the dog's flank. Where once there was suspicion, community had replaced it. The dog, aging, carried his scars like medals of devotion. The lioness's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a life well chosen. Unexpectedly, one of the cubs saved a smaller animal from a trap. It was a mirror, mercy begetting mercy. Taught and retaught, villagers celebrated with a small feast, honoring the clearing's survivors. Children danced, and the elders told the tale with moist eyes. The sanctuary stood, not as cage, but as promise to the future. Researchers documented the behavior, but left the heart of it alone. The dog, in his final years, slept more and barked less. When he finally passed, the plains mourned in a language of reverence. The lioness refused to leave his side until the sun had set twice. They buried him under the thorn where he had first lain awake, and brave, flowers were placed by human hands, and paw prints alike. The cubs rubbed their heads against the spot. As if to store memory, the lioness stood sentinel. Grief tempered by the life he had given them. From that sorrow rose a new generation that remembered kindness they carried forward, a legacy where protection wasn't exclusive to one kind. The plains felt fuller and more humane for his brief, fierce life. Children who grew up hearing the story planted trees where the dog had loved shade. Years later, those trees stood tall, a living monument to generosity. The miracle was not a single event, but a long river of small mercies flowing on. Love refuses to be boxed by history, species, or expectation. Sometimes the bravest thing a heart can do is choose to protect what it did not create. When we shelter the weak without asking their names, we plant seeds that grow into entire forests of compassion. The dog gave his courage freely. The lioness answered with a kindness that rewrote rules. Their story teaches us that family is less about likeness and more about the courage to stay. If we can learn from them, then every small act of mercy becomes a revolution. Choose kindness even when it surprises you. Some miracles ask only for a place to happen. Only for a place to happen.